Welcome to Paranormal M. How's your day going? Drop your city in the comments. This is my favorite part of the day, sitting down and sharing my paranormal stories with you. Nothing makes me happier than knowing they help you unwind and fall asleep easier. Thank you so much for all your support and for sending in your own paranormal experiences. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. Now, put your headphones on and let's begin. Hi everyone, I'm speaking to you from Thailand. Most of the time, I just type out creepy stories on social media, especially on X, and let people read them in silence. But this one has been sitting in my chest for years. It's not just scary, it's tragic and, in a strange way, unbelievably beautiful. And I really want people outside of Thailand to hear it too. So, in Thailand, we have this famous late-night radio show where ordinary people call in to share true ghost experiences. Some stories sound believable, some sound like they're totally made up, but almost all of them leave you thinking long after the call ends. One night, a father called in to talk about his daughter, a little girl named Molly. And while I was listening to him, it triggered a memory, an old headline from more than 10 years ago that shook the whole country. It was something like, "A mother who had already died still got up to make milk for her little girl." Let me tell you that story the way I remember it. So, around 15 years ago, there was a young mother living just outside Bangkok, in a small apartment in Nonthaburi. She lived there with her daughter Molly, who was about 3 years old at the time. The mother, let's call her Nita, had epilepsy. Normally she managed fine. She took her medication, went to work, came home to her daughter. It was a simple life, but it was theirs. Then one day, Nita suddenly died in her bedroom. No one knew right away. She didn't show up for work. At first, her coworkers thought maybe she overslept, or maybe her phone battery died. But when they couldn't reach her all day, one coworker got worried and called Nita's older sister, Lek, to check on her. Lek tried calling too. No answer. After several tries, something in her gut told her, this isn't right. So she drove over to Nita's place. When she reached the apartment building and called up to the unit, she heard small footsteps inside. Then the door cracked open just a little, and there was Molly. This tiny 3-year-old girl stood there in an oversized t-shirt, her hair tangled, her face a little dirty. There was a faint metallic smell clinging to her, something Lek couldn't quite process at first. Lek bent down, trying to keep her voice gentle. She asked, "Where's Mommy, sweetheart?" Molly, in that broken toddler way of speaking, answered, "Mommy's sick. Mommy's sleeping on the bed. There's red on Mommy." Lek felt her chest tighten, but she still didn't want to believe anything was truly wrong. She thought, maybe she just fainted. Maybe she had a seizure and she's still okay. But when Lek stepped inside, another smell hit her. Heavy, sweet, rotten. That's the smell you never forget once you've encountered death. She walked into the bedroom, and there on the bed was her younger sister's body, already starting to swell and change. Nita had been gone for days. The police and medics came. After checking everything, the doctors confirmed that Nita had died from complications related to her epilepsy. It looked like she'd had a seizure alone in the house, and never got back up. At first, everyone was just drowning in grief. But then they realized something didn't make sense. Molly, this tiny little girl, looked too healthy. She wasn't starving. She wasn't dehydrated. Her face was bright, her skin wasn't sunken, and she still had enough energy to walk, talk, and even cling to her aunt. So one of the relatives asked her softly, "Molly, these past few days, what did you eat?" And she answered in that innocent voice, Mommy made milk for me. She also said Mommy tucked her into bed every night. Mommy sang her a lullaby. And then there was one detail that chilled everyone there. The aunt remembered how, when she arrived, the door had opened just enough for Molly to slip out on her own. The lock was too high for a 3-year-old to reach. When they asked Molly how she came out, she said, "Mommy held my hand. Mommy walked me to the door. Mommy said, 'Go to Auntie. Mommy come later.'" What made it even stranger was what the neighbors told the police. During the days Nita was already dead, the neighbors still heard normal household sounds from the apartment. Dishes clinking in the sink, footsteps moving back and forth, the soft swish of a broom sweeping the floor. And at night, just beneath the hum of the TV and traffic, they occasionally heard a woman's voice humming a lullaby from the direction of the child's room. But no one came out. No one went in. Inside that apartment, the only living person was Molly. After the funeral, Molly went to live with her aunt, Lek, the same aunt who had found Nita's body. People slowly stopped talking about the case. New headlines came, and the old ones faded. Years passed. Molly grew bigger. Outwardly, everything looked okay. Then one day, Lek and Molly appeared on a popular Thai TV show that deals with the supernatural. It was a program where they invited spirit mediums to communicate with the dead. On the show, the medium claimed to reach Nita's spirit. Through the medium, Nita said she was still in the old apartment, restless and worried. She supposedly told Lek, "Take better care of my daughter. Don't let her suffer." The audience was moved. Some people cried watching it when it aired. The story of the devoted mother who kept watching over her child, even after death, touched a lot of hearts. But a few years later, the real horror finally surfaced. Neighbors around Lek's house started hearing strange sounds, crying, whimpering, sometimes sharp yells. At first, people thought it was just normal family arguments or a kid throwing a tantrum. But over time, the sounds became more disturbing. Someone finally called the police. When officers arrived and searched the house, what they found was heartbreaking. Molly was being kept in a dog cage. This girl, who had already lost her mother in such a terrible way, was now living like an animal. She had bruises on her arms and legs, old marks and fresh ones mixed together. The neighbors and authorities learned that Lek had been abusing her for a long time, forcing her to eat her own vomit, locking her outside, hitting her when she cried. The woman who had once told the world she was raising her niece with love had turned into her tormentor. When the news broke, the whole country was stunned. People were furious. How could someone who had seen her sister die and taken in her child do something so cruel? Molly's father, Tan, had been working far away in another province after his wife's death. He had been sending money home and trusting Lek to raise his daughter. The moment he heard what had happened, he rushed back and took Molly into his care. He blamed himself. He admitted he hadn't been around enough. He had trusted too much. He promised he wouldn't leave her again. After Molly moved in with her father, things slowly settled. But Tan started to notice something odd. At night, he would sometimes pass by her room and hear her talking softly, like she was chatting with someone else. Not babbling, talking. Pausing, listening, answering. Sometimes he heard a humming sound too. A gentle lullaby. The kind sung to small children. The same rhythm Nita used to use when Molly was a baby. Tan said on the radio that he had no doubt in his heart. It was Nita. His late wife was still there, guarding their daughter. Then one night, something changed. Tan was sitting downstairs when he heard hurried footsteps on the stairs, then small sobs. He looked up and saw Molly coming down, crying. He ran to her. "What's wrong, Molly?" What happened?" She buried her face in his shirt, shaking. After a moment, she looked up at him with red, swollen eyes and said quietly, "Mom's gone." Tun said those two words broke him. He held her and didn't know what to say. That night, the house felt painfully silent. No late-night humming, no soft talking through the door, just the sound of the fan and their breathing. From that night onward, he never again heard the lullaby. He never again heard his daughter talking to that unseen someone. And something else changed too. Molly, who used to rush to bed like she had someone waiting for her there, stopped hurrying. She went to sleep like any ordinary child, reluctant some nights, sleepy on others, but whatever invisible presence had been beside her seemed to have finally left. It was as if Nita had stayed until she was sure Molly was safe, loved, and protected. And then, only then, did she allow herself to move on. Today, Molly is a bright young woman. She's in her 20s now. She helps her dad run a small noodle stall in a market. If you saw her laughing with customers, you'd never guess the things she lived through. Sometimes people say they can feel a gentle warmth around their stall, like the atmosphere is just a bit softer. Tun likes to joke that it's because his wife is still checking if he's slicing the pork properly. But deep down, I think he really believes it. And honestly, I do too. I'll never forget this story. It reminds me that love, especially a mother's love, doesn't just stop when the heart stops beating. Sometimes it lingers just long enough to walk a child to the door, to make one last glass of milk, to sing one last lullaby, and to make sure that, in the end, they're truly, finally safe. Okay, so let me just start from the beginning. I've lived in the same house my whole life, like literally since I came home from the hospital. We never moved, never switched cities, nothing. The most moving I've ever done was when my older sister moved out and I got her room upstairs. Our upstairs is weird. There are only two doors up there, my bedroom and then the attic right next to it. That's it. No cute little hallway, no extra bathroom, nothing. Just my room and a creepy attic door that I have to walk past every night before I go to sleep. So, a few things have happened that really scared me, but for a long time I didn't tell my parents because I thought they'd just laugh it off. In my room, I have this LED sign on the wall. It used to say, Mia's room, in big cursive letters when I first got it. But I put stickers on it, so now it just says Mia with stars around it. It has a little remote that can change the color and brightness and all that. Here's the part that freaks me out. Sometimes it turns on by itself. No one touching the remote, no timer set, just suddenly, in the middle of the night, my wall lights up purple or neon blue. And it's always late. Like, the whole house is dead silent and your brain is making up noises late. And I am, admittedly, a huge scaredy cat. The first time it happened, I was lying in bed watching true crime videos on my phone. You know those commentary channels that talk about missing people and cold cases? Back then it was some guy named Tyler who I watched all the time. So I'm under my blankets, headphones in, lights off, and suddenly my wall glows bright pink. I froze. I kind of laughed at myself, turned the sign off, and the next day I told my dad. He just shrugged and was like, "It's probably a glitch, or the remote got bumped." And I remember feeling kind of dumb, so I just dropped it. The second time, though, was worse. It was around midnight. I was in my room playing an online game with my friends, one of those late-night sessions where everyone's half delirious and laughing at nothing. We were on voice chat, just talking and messing around. I glanced up toward my door for a second and saw my sign glowing this bright blue. I hadn't touched the remote. It was on my desk on the other side of the room. I stopped mid-sentence, went completely quiet, and my friend was like, "Mia, you good?" I muted my mic so fast and just started typing, telling them my sign had turned on by itself again. I got up, turned it off, and for the rest of the night I was on edge. Every little sound made me jump. I kept looking at the attic door like something was going to walk out. That's not the only thing that happens, though. My bedroom door likes to creak open on its own. At least, that's what it feels like. I'll close it all the way. Sometimes I'm sure I even locked it. And then later, I'll look up and see it cracked open just enough that I can't tell if someone pushed it or if it just drifted. Every time that happens, my heart just slams in my chest. Because upstairs is just me and that attic. Oh, and then there's my thermostat. So we keep the bedroom thermostat set at 72 degrees, or we try to. But for some reason, it never stays there. I'll wake up at 6 in the morning for school and it'll say 79. When I get home in the afternoon, it'll be 84 or 85. But those are just the everyday creepy things. The really unsettling stuff. That involves my best friend. I'll call her Rin. Before I tell you the first big story, I need to give you some context. When I was about 4, my mom got pregnant with a baby girl. They were going to name her Rosie. What was kind of special was how our birthdays would have lined up. My birthday is March 24th. Rosie's due date was March 25th. And my older brother, let's call him Owen, has his birthday on March 26th. We thought it would be this cool little birthday chain. But my mom had a miscarriage. It was really hard on everybody. I didn't fully understand it back then, but I remember the mood in the house, the way my mom cried in the kitchen when she thought we couldn't hear her. As I got older, I understood more, and Rosie became this quiet little missing piece in our family. Okay, so, this first story happened before I moved into the upstairs bedroom. Back then, my brother basically lived in our game room. That was where the console was. My parents wouldn't let him keep it in his room, so he'd stay in there late, playing whatever he was obsessed with at the time on his PlayStation. One weekend, Rin came over for a sleepover. We decided to crash in the game room because it had the comfiest couch and a big TV. Owen was there too, sitting on the floor with his headset on, completely absorbed in his game. At some point, I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up groggy, hair a mess, and Rin was just staring at me. Like, really staring. I was like, "What?" And she goes, "I have to tell you something, but please don't freak out." She told me that she woke up in the middle of the night. Owen was gone. He must have gone to his room to sleep, so it was just her on the couch and me knocked out next to her. She said she glanced over at the big window that looks out at our backyard and the pool, and saw a little girl walking along the edge of the water. Rin said the girl had long brown hair and was wearing this pale dress. And the part that really stuck with me? She said the girl looked exactly like me, just smaller. Like an 8-year-old version of me instead of the age I actually was then. Rin watched her for a few seconds, stunned, and then the girl just wasn't there anymore. I honestly don't remember exactly how I reacted when she told me. I don't know if she told me right that morning or a bit later, but at some point my brain connected it. Rosie. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, at least not in the movie way, but the idea that maybe my little sister, the one who never got to be born, was still somehow close, watching over us, that kind of lodged itself in my chest and never really left. The last story I remember, the one that still makes my stomach drop when I think about it, also involves Rin. More context time. I have an older cousin, but I grew up calling her my sister. I'll call her Danny. She moved in with my parents when she was about 13, so by the time I was born, she was already living with us. Technically, she's my mom's niece, but to me and Owen, she was just our big sister. Danny is a lot older than us, 12 or 13 years, something like that. So she moved out when we were still pretty young. She had her first kid really early, a little girl, and then later a son. For this story, we're going to talk about her son. I'll call him Eli. Eli's this really sweet kid, very shy, and he loves baseball. He's always wearing some kind of cap, even indoors. Our living room is big and open, which is nice during the day. At night, though, it's a little unnerving because the back wall is basically all windows. If someone were in our backyard, they could just stand there and watch us, and we might not notice right away. I never really liked sleeping down there. I always felt safer upstairs, just me and my creepy attic door. But Rin liked the big couch and the TV, and I wanted her to be happy, so we set up blankets and pillows and fell asleep in the living room. At some point in the night, I woke up. I didn't have my phone nearby, and there was no clock I could see, but something in me was like, it's 2 a.m. You know that feeling when your body just knows it's the middle of the night? The room was dark, but some light was coming in from the street through the blinds, just enough to see shapes. I turned my head toward Rin, and that's when I saw him. There was a tall, shadowy figure standing over her, right next to where she was sleeping. It looked like a teenage boy, taller than both of us, and he was wearing a baseball cap. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline, but it was so clear. Like, I remember the angle of the hat and the way his shoulders were hunched forward a little, like he was leaning down. For a second I thought I was still dreaming, but the fear felt way too real. My heart was pounding, my mouth went dry, and I just stared. Then the shadow turned its head toward me. The moment we made eye contact, if you can even call it that, it vanished. Just gone. No footsteps, no fading away. 1 second it was there, the next second there was nothing but the couch and Rin sleeping. I lay there for a long time, frozen, trying to decide if I should wake her up or not. Eventually I must have fallen back asleep, because the next thing I remember is it being morning. Later, when we were talking, I told Rin about what I'd seen. She kind of laughed it off at first and said, maybe that was future Eli watching over us. You know he's obsessed with baseball. And I laughed too, because it was easier than sitting in the idea that maybe some random shadow guy was watching us sleep. I tried to convince myself it was just a dream, or that my eyes were messing with me in the dark. But the image never really left my mind. Then, this last summer, about 3 years after that happened, we were in my pool just hanging out, talking about spooky stuff for fun. I brought the story up again. At first, Rin was smiling, kind of swimming around, and then I told her, hey, remember that night in the living room when I saw that tall shadow in the baseball cap? Her whole expression changed. She went from playful to terrified in a second. She told me that she had read or watched something about people seeing tall, shadowy figures at night, especially ones that stand at the side of the bed and watch people sleep. She said it really freaked her out and that she hates thinking about it. I didn't want to make her more scared, so I laughed and said, I'm totally kidding. I was just messing with you. I probably imagined it. But I wasn't joking. I can still see that outline if I think about it too long. I can still feel that heavy, electric fear in my chest. And sometimes, when my sign randomly turns on at 1 a.m, or my door creaks open when I know I closed it, or my thermostat is way higher than it should be, I catch myself wondering who or what is actually sharing this house with me. So, let me tell you about my very first ghost hunt, because I still think about this night. It was late September last year, and me and my 2 friends, let's call them Emma and Jake, to keep their real names private, decided it would be fun to go ghost hunting for the first time. Famous last words, right? We booked a guided ghost hunt at Chillingham Castle. Proper, legit thing. As the day got closer, we were buzzing. Nervous, but buzzing. A few hours before we were due to leave, Emma decides it's a brilliant idea to buy a spirit board. Like, of all days to do that. We ended up using it in Jake's room. They were dating at the time, by the way. Jake wanted no part of it, which, honestly, fair enough. Me and Emma, being absolute idiots, decided we'd give it a go. So we sit down, fingers on the planchette, candles going, being all dramatic even though we're low-key terrified. At first, it's just random spirits, you know, letters moving slowly, vague answers. I still don't know if Emma was messing with me or not. But then we connect with this one spirit who spells out the name Lyron. Now this is where it starts to get weird. We're asking basic questions, and through the board, Lyron tells us he's a demon. I'm sat there like, yeah, all right, mate, because I don't fully believe in that kind of thing. While we're still talking to it, I quickly look up the name on my phone. Nothing useful comes up. No demon mythology, no creepy legends, just nothing, which somehow made it creepier. Eventually we say goodbye, close the session properly, all the stuff you're supposed to do, and put the board away. I kind of laugh it off like, that was dumb but fun. But I remember this weird, heavy feeling in the room once we'd finished, like the air had changed. Fast forward a bit, and it's time to drive to Chillingham Castle. We set off at about 9:30 p.m. It's dark, the roads are windy, and with the way Jake was driving, I genuinely thought that if anything was going to kill us that night, it would be him and not a ghost. We finally get there, park up, and meet the rest of the group. There's maybe about 12 other people plus the guide, so not massive, but enough that you feel a bit safer, you know? The guide comes in, introduces himself, explains the rules, shows us the equipment, rods, spirit boxes, music box, all that stuff, and talks about some of the spirits that are said to roam the castle. My heart is already going, but I'm trying to act cool. Then we head into our first investigation. Because the original basement was shut off for safety reasons, they'd recreated a sort of basement setup in a different room on the ground floor. Low lighting, stone walls, props. It had that proper eerie cellar vibe. We were given dowsing rods to hold. Now, I'm not going to lie, my hands were shaking. All three of us were standing near the entrance side of the room, kind of huddled together. The guide turned off the lights, and the room dropped into this heavy darkness. He started asking questions, and slowly, the rods began to move. Left, right, crossing over. You could hear people gasping every so often. I was trying not to overthink it, like, it's just my hands, it's just nerves. But the scariest part for me was the door. For some reason, I could not stop looking at it. It was like someone was standing right next to me, just off to the side, by that door. Every time my eyes drifted away, I felt this pull to look back at it. Then I started hearing voices, very faint, like whispering or quiet talking, coming from near the door. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then Emma leans over and whispers, "Are you hearing that too?" And my stomach just dropped. I remember thinking, okay, that was cool, and absolutely terrifying. After that, we moved on to the second investigation. This time, we were the first ones into the room. I'm pretty sure the guide said it was connected to King James, maybe the King's Chamber or something like that. Anyway, we walk in and there's a big wooden table with 6 chairs around it, a statue off to one side, and a back room beyond an open doorway. I'm looking around, taking it all in, when I feel Jake nudge me. He leans in and whispers, "Did you see that?" I hadn't. I was facing the other way. But both he and Emma swear they saw a hand pull back from the statue. Just a pale hand, moving away like someone had been resting it there. I didn't see it myself, so I can't say if it was real. But they were properly freaked out. And I know them well enough to know when they're joking and when they're not. They were not joking. For this investigation, we used the spirit box with the Estes method, and one of those music boxes that plays when something moves in front of it. We took turns with the Estes method, blindfolded, headphones on, only hearing the spirit box while everyone else asks questions. For the first 5-10 minutes, it was normal, I guess. A few random words that sometimes lined up with what was being asked. Then Emma takes her turn again with the spirit box. She's barely had the headphones on for 10 seconds when she says, clear as anything, demon. And the whole table just goes quiet. Now, there is said to be a malevolent spirit at the castle, called Tim or Timothy. The guide had mentioned him earlier, but said he was usually on a different floor, not up where we were. So I turn to Jake, half joking, half not, and say, imagine if Lyran followed us here. Literally, as soon as I say that, there's this massive bang from the back room. Not a tiny tap, not someone accidentally kicking something. A proper, loud crash. I jumped so hard I genuinely thought I'd, had a little accident. I didn't, thankfully, but my heart was racing. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from above. The room had an open section of ceiling, like a balcony or gallery overhead, and I kept glancing up, convinced something or someone was looking down at us. A couple of minutes go by, and I turn to look toward the door. That's when I see her. A shadow, clear as day. The outline of a woman in what looked like a dress, gliding across, maybe 5 feet in front of me. Not a trick of the light, not just a flicker. A full, solid shadow moving right across my line of sight. The guide saw it too. It wasn't him. He was behind me, about 7 or 8 feet away, sitting on a box that creaked every time he shifted his weight. I didn't hear it move, and when I glanced back, he was still in the same place. I was honestly blown away at that point. Seeing something like that with your own eyes, it hits different from stories. Then, just when I thought I'd hit my limit, something else happened. I felt a touch. Not a comforting hand on the shoulder or anything like that. This was 5 distinct pokes in my lower back, just above where my bum is, one after another. I spun around so fast I nearly made myself dizzy. But again, the guide was still where he'd been, relaxed, not even close enough to reach me. Jake was right next to me at the table, arms on the table the whole time. There was just no one there who could have done it. That really shook me. After that, things calmed down a bit, and about 10 minutes later we wrapped up that session and moved on. The final investigation was in what I'm pretty sure was the chapel. I'll be honest, most of that last investigation kind of blurred together for me. We were using some equipment, asking the usual questions, and for a while, not much happened. Then someone asked, "Tim, are you here with us?" About 2 seconds later, there was this massive bang from the back room, but it didn't sound like someone knocking on a wall. It sounded like something being thrown against it. Proper force. The sound echoed around the chapel and out into the corridor. Everyone jumped. Even the guide looked a bit surprised, and he's probably heard everything by now. After that, things settled down again, and eventually, the night came to an end. So yeah, that was my first ever paranormal investigation. We started the night messing around with a spirit board, talking to something that called itself Lyran, and ended it in a haunted castle with shadows walking past us, unseen hands poking me in the back, and something angry enough to chuck things at the wall. Do I know exactly what we experienced? No. Could some of it have a logical explanation? Maybe. But I know how I felt in those moments, and that's not something I can just shrug off. Either way, it completely hooked me. And if you've got any recommendations for other haunted places I should check out next, seriously, tell me. I'll look into them. Even if a tiny part of me is wondering whether Lyran's still keeping an eye on where I go. So, let me tell you about this really weird night I still can't explain. It was a few years ago, and I remember it so clearly because of how wrong everything felt. I think think it was around 1:45 in the morning when I got to the laundromat. You know that kind of tired where your eyes burn but your brain is still racing? That was me. I'd locked myself out of my house like an idiot. My phone was dead, and the laundromat was the only place open with lights on. When I walked in, there was this woman there, maybe late 30s, early 40s, shoulder-length dark hair, big tote bag, just quietly pulling her clothes out of one of the dryers. She had this kind face, like someone's cool aunt. I kind of hovered for a second, then said, "Excuse me, I'm really sorry to bother you, but my phone died and I'm locked out. Is there any way I could borrow your phone to call my parents?" She didn't even hesitate. "Of course," she said, and handed it over with a little smile. "Go ahead." I called my parents, once, then again. No answer, just straight to voicemail. Each ring made my stomach sink a little more. I handed the phone back and apologized for wasting her time. She shook her head. "You're fine. I hope you get a hold of them. Good luck, okay?" She gave me this sympathetic look, then walked out into the night with her laundry basket balanced on her hip. Once she left, the silence kind of settled in. It was just me, the hum of the building, and the TVs mounted up near the ceiling. There were 3 of them, all flat screens, each playing a different news channel on low volume. The only other sound was this faint buzzing from the fluorescent lights. I sat down in one of those hard plastic chairs against the wall, thinking I'd just rest my eyes. I started nodding off, drifting in and out of sleep for maybe, 45 minutes? An hour? My sense of time got fuzzy. At some point, though, I woke up with this sudden heavy feeling in my chest. Not like a physical pain, more like dread. No reason for it. Nothing had changed, really. Same TVs, same empty room. But something felt off. I remember looking up at the screens. Each TV had a different anchor, different graphics, different headlines. But as I watched, it was like my brain stopped believing it. I started thinking, this is all fake. None of this is real. And then, it got stranger. The anchors on each channel were talking, but their words started to line up in this creepy way. Not exactly the same sentences, but the rhythm of their speech, the way their mouths moved. It all seemed synchronized, like they were rehearsing the same script. My ears were ringing a little, and the sound of their voices blended into this eerie, almost robotic murmur. I remember my heart pounding, my palms sweating, and this thought just screaming in my head. Something is wrong. Something is really wrong. That's when I panicked. I grabbed my jacket and decided I needed to get out of there. The second I stepped outside, it hit me how cold it was. The air felt sharper than it had when I arrived. And the parking lot, this is what really unnerved me, was completely empty. When I first got there, there had been cars scattered around, some lights on in the distance, that normal late-night vibe. But now, nothing. No cars, no people, no sound except the wind. Just this big, open, dark lot. And then I heard it. The sound of a car turning into the lot behind me. You know how your body just instinctively tenses up sometimes? I froze and turned around. An old station wagon, like something straight out of the late 80s or early 90s, rolled up and stopped in front of the laundromat. The paint was this faded green, and one of the headlights looked dimmer than the other. The engine cut off, and after a second, the passenger door opened. A guy stepped out. He looked maybe mid-20s. He was holding a small laundry basket tucked under one arm. He had on light blue jeans, a red and black plaid shirt, and these worn-out sneakers that looked like old Converse or something similar. His hair was kind of messy, like he'd just rolled out of bed. What got me, though, was his whole vibe. He didn't glance around, didn't say goodbye, didn't acknowledge whoever was driving. He just shut the door behind him and walked straight toward the laundromat entrance, eyes forward. No hesitation, no looking back. The moment he closed the door behind him, the station wagon pulled off. No pause, just pulled out and disappeared down the street. I stood there for a second, hugging myself against the cold, and then I thought, okay, maybe I can borrow his phone. Maybe his parents will actually pick up at 3 a.m., you know? So I turned around and went back into the laundromat. Inside, the TVs were still on, the news still playing. But the place was completely silent. No dryers spinning, no washing machines running, nothing. Just the soft drone of the anchor's voices and the hum of the lights. I looked around for the guy. No sign of him. No station wagon guy, no laundry basket, no open washer, no scattered clothes. Nothing. I thought, maybe he went straight to the bathroom. That would make sense, right? So I walked to the back, to that little hallway where the bathroom doors are. I pushed the bathroom door open and called out, "Hello?" No response. I tried again, louder. "Hey, sorry, is anyone in here?" Still nothing. The bathroom was empty. One stall door slightly open, the rest closed, but no feet, no sounds, just that weird, echoey quiet. And that's when it started again. The feeling that I wasn't alone, even though I clearly was. I stepped back into the main room, and as I did, I heard it. Clink, 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 clink. The sound of the change machine spitting out coins. If you've ever used one of those coin machines, you know that distinct metallic cascade sound, right? It was exactly that. The machine was going off like somebody was feeding in bills and getting quarters for their laundry. Only, no one was standing there. I walked closer, slowly, like I was trying not to scare whatever was happening. The machine kept making the noise, that steady rhythm of coins dropping into the tray. But when I looked down, the coin slot was empty. No quarters piling up, no loose coins rolling around. Just the sound, coming from nowhere. Something about that broke me a little. It was like the room was pretending to still be in use, pretending there were people doing laundry when there weren't. My heart was racing again, and all I could think was, I should not be here. So I did the same thing I'd done before. I left. But this time, when I pushed open the door and stepped outside, everything was different again. The parking lot was full, cars everywhere, different makes and models. A couple of people walking toward the entrance, someone else slamming their trunk shut, the distant sound of music from a car radio. It looked exactly like it had when I first arrived, like that empty, silent version of the lot had never existed. I didn't even try to make sense of it. I just started walking. I figured I'd find a gas station or a 24-hour place where I could sit and wait until morning, or until my parents finally picked up. To this day, I have no explanation for what happened in that laundromat. I don't know if I nodded off and slipped into some kind of half-dream, or if I walked into that place at the wrong time, like caught between two moments. I don't know who that woman was who lent me her phone, or where the station wagon guy really went. All I know is that the fear I felt was real. The emptiness, the strange, fake feeling of the news, the sound of coins that never appeared. Those details are burned into my memory. And even now, when I pass by a laundromat late at night, part of me wonders, was that just a tired brain playing tricks on me? Or did I step into something I wasn't supposed to see? So let me tell you about this really strange night that still messes with my head. This was maybe a year and a half ago, in the middle of winter. I was ridiculously sick, like full-on flu, fever, body aches, the whole thing. I was sharing an apartment with my older sister, Nina, at the time. She's the kind of person who checks on you every few hours if you so much as sneeze, so she'd been popping into my room on and off all day. That night, I was in my bed, curtains closed, lights off except for this little warm bedside lamp. I felt absolutely awful, so I decided, okay, that's it. I'm just going to sleep this off. I remember feeling this wave of exhaustion hit me, like someone had just pulled the plug on my energy. The last thing I remember before knocking out was Nina coming into my room. She stepped in, leaned on the doorway for a second, then came over by my white dresser near the window. We had this quick little conversation. I honestly don't remember what we were talking about now, just that it was casual, nothing serious. She laughed at something I said, and I can still see her expression so clearly in my mind. Then she held out her phone and was like, "Hey, look at these texts real quick." I tried. I really did. But my eyes were burning, my head was pounding, and the words on her screen were all fuzzy. It was like trying to read underwater. I remember squinting and saying, "Ugh, I can't read that right now. I'm so tired. Just show me tomorrow, okay?" And she kind of shrugged and went, "All right, go to sleep," then turned and walked out of my room. I swear to you, not even a full second later, I was out. Like, gone. Deep, heavy sleep. I didn't toss and turn. I don't remember any dreams, nothing. Just darkness. A few hours later, I woke up. My fever had broken a little, and I was just lying there in bed scrolling through my phone, kind of dazed but awake. That's when Nina came into my room. Again. She walked in like normal, sat at the edge of my bed, and we started talking. We were mid-conversation about something totally random. I think about our cousin or some drama from work, when I suddenly remembered her trying to show me that text before I fell asleep. So I stopped and said, "Oh yeah, what was that message you were trying to show me earlier, on your phone?" And the way she looked at me, she was so confused. She goes, "What are you talking about? I came up here to see the messages you were trying to show me." Now I'm confused. I'm sick, I'm tired, my brain is foggy, and I'm thinking she's just messing with me. So I kind of frown and say, "No, Nina, I'm serious. You came in here before I went to sleep, stood over there by my dresser, and tried to show me some messages on your phone. I told you I was too tired and I'd look at it later." She shakes her head immediately and says, "No, that didn't happen. I never came in here. You came downstairs to Mom's place and tried to show me some messages, but I was too tired to read them, so I told you I'd look at them later. Then you said you were going to bed and went back upstairs." At this point, I'm getting irritated, because I feel awful and it really sounds like she's just playing with me for no reason. I'm like, "Why are you joking right now? I haven't left this bed. I remember you coming in here. I remember what side of the bed you were on. I remember you laughing. I couldn't read your screen because I was exhausted. I did not go anywhere." And she's just staring at me, dead serious, saying, "I'm not joking. I was at Mom's. You came down to see me." So now we're both confused and a little worked up. I'm insisting, "You came into my room." And she's insisting, "You came downstairs." Finally, I say, "Okay, you know what? Let's ask Mom." So I drag myself out of bed, still weak, still sick, and we both go downstairs to my mom's apartment. My mom opens the door, all casual, like nothing is weird. I ask her, "Hey, was Nina down here with you earlier? Or did she come upstairs to my room before I fell asleep?" My mom nods and says, "Yeah, Nina was here. She was sleeping in the back room for a while." You came down earlier, remember? You tried to show her something on your phone, but she was too tired to look at it. So you said you were going back to bed. Me and Nina just look at each other. That moment was silent. Just this weird, heavy pause. I could tell from her face she was thinking the exact same thing I was. How can we both remember the same situation, but from opposite sides? She finally says, kind of quietly, I told you, I never came upstairs to your room. And I'm standing there like, I know what I experienced. I know I was awake. I remember you standing by my dresser. I remember your voice, your laugh, the way you held your phone out to me. I remember the angle of the light in the room. I wasn't dreaming. I wasn't drunk. I was just sick and exhausted, but I was awake. And she says, with the same conviction, well, I remember sitting on Mom's bed and you standing in the doorway, trying to show me your messages. I remember being too tired to focus on the screen. I remember your exact tone when you said you'd just show me later. Our stories match, but flipped. Same phone. Same, I'm too tired to read it, I'll check later. Same feeling of exhaustion. Same kind of casual, sleepy conversation. Just completely reversed. To this day, if you ask us separately, we will both swear on our lives that our version is what really happened. I will tell you with my whole chest, she came into my room. She'll tell you with the same energy, I went downstairs to hers. And here's the thing, this isn't even the first weird thing that's happened between us. There have been other moments, even stranger, where reality just doesn't line up the way it's supposed to. I don't know if it was some kind of glitch, a crossed wire in both our memories, overlapping timelines, or something our brains did because we were both exhausted. All I know is, I wasn't dreaming, and neither was she. We were both absolutely sure we were fully awake, in two completely different places, having what feels like the same conversation from opposite sides. And honestly, I still have no idea how to make sense of that. Alright, so let me just tell you this straight, the way it happened. It was a weeknight, maybe around 11:15 p.m. or so. I was heading into town to grab a few things from the store. I live way out in the sticks. No streetlights, hardly any neighbors, just vegetation, trees, and dirt roads. About 10 minutes into the drive, my temperature gauge starts climbing. Next thing I know, the warning light pops on and the car starts to overheat. So I pull over on the shoulder of this 2-lane highway, kill the engine, pop the hood, and just stand there in the dark, listening to the metal tick. I let it cool for a while, check the radiator, top it off with the little bit of water I had, and think, okay, I'll just ease it home. I get maybe another couple miles down the road. Same thing. Temperature shoots up again. By now it's after midnight. I'm not that far from home, maybe a mile and a quarter walk. It's a clear night, stars out, a little chilly but not miserable. And I'm thinking, why risk blowing the engine? I could use the exercise anyway. So I pull off a little more, lock the car up, throw my hands in my pockets, and decide to walk it. The road I live off of is this rough mountain back road, not paved, mostly packed dirt and gravel, ruts everywhere. I walk along the highway first, then turn onto my road. There's just enough moonlight that my eyes adjust. I don't even bother with my phone flashlight. I'm moving at a pretty good pace, just wanting to get home and crawl into bed. So I'm about 2/3 of the way down my road, and on my left there's this long split-rail wooden fence and a gravel driveway that leads to one of the neighbors' places. I'm walking, minding my own business, when I hear something. Faint footsteps on gravel. Crunch, crunch. Very soft, but clear. Out of the corner of my eye, I see something coming up that driveway toward the road. And my first thought is not ghost or paranormal or anything like that. My first thought is, oh great, one of the neighbors thinks I'm out here creeping around, casing houses in the middle of the night. I'm fully expecting a flashlight in my face, maybe a gun, definitely some questions. Like, hey, what are you doing out here? So I'm bracing for that. And then I realize what I'm actually looking at. There's a man walking toward me, except I can see through him. At first, it's almost like that Predator effect. You know, in the old movie, where the outline kind of shimmers and takes on the color of the trees behind it? It's like that. The shape is there, but it's blending a little with the background. As he gets closer, though, he becomes more defined. He looks like a solid guy, little broader build than me, around my height. He's wearing this red and gray flannel shirt, jeans, and these old work boots. His hair is sort of shaggy, like that almost mullet style you see on some country singers. And he is just gliding up this driveway toward the road. He steps out of the driveway onto the edge of the road, maybe 30 feet to my left, and then, this is the part that really got me. He turns and starts walking alongside me. We're not shoulder to shoulder, but he's pacing me, same speed, just off to my left by the fence line. We walk like that for, I don't know, 100 to 150 feet. Long enough for it not to be my imagination. Long enough for me to actually study him. The whole time he's not looking around, not checking the road. He's looking at me. We get to the end of that split rail fence, and that's where he stops. He slows, turns toward the fence, and just rests one arm up on the top rail, like someone leaning on a bar, and he keeps his eyes locked on me. I don't say a word. I don't wave. I don't break stride. I just keep walking, every hair on my head and neck standing straight up. My brain is going, nope, 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 this is not happening. But my eyes are saying, oh yeah, it is. I wanted so badly to look back, but I was terrified that if I did, he'd be closer, or something would be different. So I just face forward and keep walking, repeating in my head, what the hell was that? What did I just see? Did that really happen? Over and over. It's not even pure fear at first, it's disbelief. Like my whole understanding of what's real just got nudged sideways. As I get closer to my house, the feeling changes. It goes from disbelief to this really deep uneasiness. It's creeping me out more with every step because now I'm replaying it. The way he came deliberately down that driveway. The way he walked beside me like he'd come out just to meet me on the road. That sad look on his face. And it was sad. That's the part that sticks with me the most. He didn't look angry or threatening. He looked like he wanted to say something. Like he had something important he needed to tell me, but couldn't get the words out. I finally get home, lock the door maybe a little faster than usual, and I don't sleep great that night. Just keep hearing gravel footsteps in my head. Next morning, I'm in the kitchen, making coffee and trying to act normal, but it's eating at me. So I tell my dad, his name's Mark, what happened. I say, look, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need to tell you about something I saw last night on the road. Now, I've always been open to the idea of UFOs, aliens, all that. I figured the universe is big. Who knows what's out there? But ghosts? Spirits? I've always thought that stuff was just stories. Fun for movies, but not real life. So I'm telling my dad this whole thing, expecting him to just kind of nod and chalk it up to headlights or my eyes playing tricks on me. And yeah, he's got that skeptical look at first. But then he stops me and asks, okay, exactly where did this happen? And I say, you know that long split rail fence on the left? The one by that gravel driveway before our place? Right there. And I watch his whole expression change. He goes quiet for a second and then says, you remember I told you about that neighbor down there? The one who, passed away in his house? That's the driveway. It hits me all at once. I remember him mentioning, about a year before I moved back in, that a guy who lived down that drive had taken his own life. We didn't know him well, just a quiet neighbor who kept to himself most of the time. And I'm standing there in the kitchen with my coffee, and suddenly I've got tears in my eyes. The goosebumps come back, full force. My whole body feels electric. Because now it's not just a weird figure on a dark road. It's possibly someone. A real person. Someone whose house I walk past all the time without thinking. Up until that night, I would have told you, with total confidence, that all paranormal stuff was nonsense. Just stories people tell. But I swear to you, with my whole chest, I saw a man. I saw him like I'm seeing this room right now. And at the same time, I saw through him. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I was just tired and trying to get home because my stupid car overheated. And then, that happened. Part of me hopes I never see anything like that again. And another part of me, the part that keeps thinking about his face, wonders what he was trying to say, and if he'll ever try to say it again. So, let me just tell you this straight, because I still don't fully understand it myself. It was supposed to be just a walk. Nothing dramatic, nothing cursed. Just me being stupid and restless. There's this old cemetery behind our town. You know the kind. Forgotten, overgrown. The kind adults warn kids about for no real reason. I'd passed it 100 times in daylight, but that night I thought, why not? It was close to midnight. The sky was heavy, and the air smelled like wet leaves and iron. The gate was half off its hinges. When I pushed it, it didn't just creak, it screamed. I swear that sound went straight into my teeth. I stepped through, and as soon as both my feet were inside, the gate slammed shut behind me. I didn't touch it. I just stood there for a second, heart pounding, telling myself it was the wind. You do that too, right? Immediately try to rationalize stuff so you don't freak out. My phone flashlight was the only thing cutting through the fog. The graves were everywhere, some leaning, some sunk into the earth, some cracked open like something had climbed out long ago and never bothered to clean up. Then I saw it, a shape, a figure, standing between two crooked gravestones. Tall, too still. You know when your brain tries to pretend something is a tree or a statue just so you don't panic? That's what I did. I squinted into the fog and whispered, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. My flashlight flickered once, twice, and then cut out completely. Everything went black. And in that darkness, right next to my ear, so close I could feel the warmth of it, I heard breathing. Slow, wet, like whoever it was had just run a long way and was trying not to let me hear. I froze. I didn't move, didn't turn around. I just stood there, clenching my phone in my hand like it was a weapon. Then, just as suddenly as it went out, the light came back. The figure was gone. I spun around. Nothing. Just grave after grave, fog curling between them like it was alive. And right in front of me, a few steps ahead, was a stone that didn't look like the others. Older, darker. The edges had been eaten away by time. The letters were deep, carved by hand, not machine. I walked up to it without really deciding to. It felt like being pulled. The name carved into it was Thomas, 1327, 1402. An old name, old dates, just another grave, right? I don't know why I did it, but I knelt down and pressed my fingers to the stone. It was freezing. Not cold like a rock at night, cold like metal pulled from a freezer. And then it happened. For less than a second, the name changed. Right under Thomas, the stone shifted. The letters stretched and bent like they were made of smoke and ice, and new ones carved themselves into the surface, glowing faintly through the fog. Daniel, 1993, 2025. My first name, my birth year, and this year. I felt the world tilt. For a second, I thought I was going to pass out right there on that grave. My phone screen shut off again, but this time it wasn't just the light. The whole thing went dead in my hand. No battery warning, no flicker, just black. Then I heard it. Not in the air, not in my ears. Inside my head, like a thought that wasn't mine. You're early. It wasn't angry. It wasn't kind. It was disappointed. That broke whatever courage I had left. I don't remember standing up. I don't remember turning around. I just remember running, branches smacking my face, stones sliding under my feet, feeling like someone's eyes were pinned between my shoulder blades the whole way. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what everyone does when something doesn't make sense. I opened my laptop. I searched everything I could think of. Thomas 1327 through 1402 grave. Old cemetery legend. Ancient tombstone name changing. I even tried Latin versions of the name. Nothing. No local legends, no ghost stories, no weird history. Like that grave didn't exist. So I tried something else. I opened our town's group chat. You know, the kind where people complain about noise and post pictures of lost dogs. I scrolled up, way up, because I remembered something. A random line I'd half read weeks before. I found it. Luca, did anyone else see that thing near the old cemetery? Jonas, yeah, by that really old grave at the back. Mira, the one with the name Thomas? I stared at the messages and my whole body went cold. They were dated from a month ago. I'd seen them then and just kept scrolling. I thought they were joking. Right under those messages was another one. No name, no profile picture, just a gray circle and a blank display name. It said, "Those who see me don't stop at the first time." As I read it, my phone glitched. The screen froze, turned white, then black. It restarted on its own. When it finally came back on, I went straight to the chat. The messages were gone. Not just that one. The whole section of the conversation. Like someone had highlighted those lines and hit delete on reality. 3 days passed. I told myself I wasn't going back. That I wasn't that stupid. That whatever I saw, whatever I heard, it was probably my brain trying to freak me out. But the thing is, after that night, my house didn't feel empty anymore. I'd catch myself turning around because I was sure someone was standing in the doorway. I'd wake up at night convinced someone was leaning over my bed, even though I'd open my eyes and see nothing in the dark. The third night, at 12:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. One message, from a blank account. Same gray circle as before. I grabbed the phone instantly, but the notification vanished before I could tap it. No new chat. No new message. Just this cold, heavy feeling in my chest. On the fourth day, I couldn't take it anymore. I went back. The sky was clearer this time, the moon sharp and thin. The gate didn't scream. It swung open quietly, like it had been waiting for me. I walked straight to where I remembered the old grave. Except, it wasn't there. The patch of earth was disturbed, like something had been dug up in a hurry and then half-heartedly filled back in. No stone, no name, just a metal stake hammered into the ground. One word scratched into it. Not engraved, scratched, like with a knife or a nail. Remember. I just stood there, mouth dry, heart racing. And then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging, like bare feet on wet grass. I turned around. It was there. The figure I'd seen before, except closer now. Too close. It wasn't just a shadow this time. It had a face, if you could call it that. The skin was too pale, stretched too tight. The eyes were wrong, too deep, too dark, too empty. The mouth hung half open, like it was always in the middle of a breath it could never quite finish. Its head tilted, like it was studying me, or recognizing me. It lifted one arm slowly, so slowly, and pointed past me, to the disturbed patch of earth where the grave used to be. And in that same quiet, breathy voice inside my head, it said, "The place is ready." My throat closed up. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. My body felt like it was filled with cement. The only thing that worked was my heartbeat, slamming against my ribs. I don't remember turning away. I don't remember running back through the gate. But I remember the sound I heard as I left. Breathing. Right behind me. Keeping pace. Not getting tired. I made it home. Somehow. Again. One new message. No name, no picture. Same blank account. By the time I grabbed the phone, the notification was gone. No chat, no trace. But for a split second, when the screen woke up, I saw the preview. I'm still waiting. It happens every night now. 3:33 a.m. Screen lights up. Blank account. Message appears. Vanishes. Sometimes I can catch part of the preview. Don't be late. You know where. The year is almost over. And once. You shouldn't have touched the stone, Daniel. I've tried blocking unknown accounts. I've changed my number. I've switched phones. It doesn't matter. It always finds a way to send that one message at that exact time. Here's the part that really scares me, though. Last week, I went to visit my parents. They still live closer to the old part of town. On the way back, I passed the cemetery road. I told myself I wouldn't look, that I'd just keep walking, eyes forward, pretend the place wasn't there. But I did look. Just once. There's a new headstone near the back now. Smooth, pale stone, clean and recent, like it's waiting for fresh letters. No name on it. Not yet. But right in front of it, sticking out of the earth, is that same metal stake. The word has changed. It doesn't say "remember" anymore. Now it says, "already yours." So this is why I'm telling you all of this. Not to get you to feel sorry for me or to make you believe in ghosts. Honestly, I don't care if you believe me. I just need you to listen. If you're ever traveling and you end up in some old European town with a forgotten cemetery at the edge of it, and you're bored or curious or trying to impress someone, if you walk among the older graves and you find a stone that reads Thomas, 1327 to 1402, don't touch it. Don't kneel down. Don't trace the letters. Don't even say the name out loud. Because if you do, if you give it your attention, you won't just remember the grave. You'll start hearing the breathing too. So, let me tell you about the night that still makes my chest feel tight when I think about it. It was my second year at Northbridge University, and the rumor going around campus was that if you visited the old hillside cemetery after midnight, you wouldn't come back with the same number of people you went in with. We laughed it off, obviously. We were 19, full of instant noodles and overconfidence. There were 11 of us that night. We met by the back gate of the dorms just before midnight. Everyone had something. Cheap chips, bottled tea, a flashlight. Somebody brought a tiny Bluetooth speaker. I remember the air was thick, kind of sticky, like the world had been holding its breath all day and only started exhaling once we stepped outside. The cemetery sat behind the university's old library, up this narrow path where the streetlights never quite reached. As we walked, some of us linked arms. Not because we were scared, at least that's what we said, but because it felt like the right thing to do when you're pretending not to be afraid. I was walking next to this guy we all called Echo. That wasn't his real name, but he talked in this soft way that made people lean in to listen, and jokes tended to bounce back to him. So, Echo stuck. Anyway, the sky was cloudy, but it wasn't foggy at first. That came later. We slipped through the old iron gate, half open, like it had been waiting for us. The stone path was cracked, weeds pushing through. Some headstones were leaning, some broken. The whole place had this feeling, like it remembered more than it should. Someone in the back started humming a childish ghost song, and we all shushed them. It was just us, but it didn't feel like just us. Not long after we stepped in, the weather shifted. You know when it gets cold so suddenly that your skin prickles before your brain catches up? It was like that. The wind picked up, sharp and fast, and this fine, cold drizzle started falling. Needles on our cheeks, on our hands. Then, out of nowhere, snow started mixing with the rain, in the middle of late autumn. Tiny white flakes swirling in the beam of our flashlight. We all kind of laughed it off. Wow, weird timing, right? But I could feel the way everyone's shoulders tensed. And then it happened. One of the girls up front let out this raw, honest scream. We spun around, lights swinging over tombstones and grass, and she was just standing there, shaking, pointing at the space next to her. "I was holding his arm," she said. "I was holding his arm." The space beside her was empty. Echo, who had been right next to her a second before, was gone. At first, we thought he'd jumped behind a gravestone as a joke. It would have been exactly the kind of stupid prank someone would pull, right? So we called his name. We laughed a little too loudly. "Okay, Echo, come on. Not funny. You can come out." Nothing. That's when someone said, "Let's count, just to be sure." So we lined up as best we could in that uneven, wet ground, and one of the guys started counting, tapping each shoulder as the flashlight beam passed over our faces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He frowned. "Wait, there were 11 of us," I said. "Count again," someone muttered. We did, but this time something felt wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Still 10. Echo was missing, but it didn't feel like we were one short. It felt even, like the group had sealed itself at 10 and refused to admit he was gone. Everyone told her she was being creepy, but nobody told her she was wrong. We should have left. Any reasonable person would have turned around right there. But real life isn't reasonable, and neither are 19-year-olds fueled by myths and midnight bravado. Someone said, "We can't just leave Echo here." And that was it. The decision was made. We pushed deeper into the cemetery. The fog rolled in slowly, like it had been waiting for its cue. It gathered low at first, curling around our ankles, then rose up, softening the edges of gravestones until they looked like crooked teeth in a ghost's mouth. Trees at the far end blurred into smudges of shadow. I remember clutching my flashlight so hard my fingers cramped. We kept calling his name. "Echo! Hey! Answer if you hear us!" The sound of our voices flattened out, like the fog was swallowing them. And then, all at once, we saw him. He was standing near a black, cracked headstone with no name on it, just a faint, worn-out carving that was impossible to read. Our lights hit him altogether, and everyone froze. Because it was Echo, and it wasn't. His hair, he'd had this messy, dark hair before, was gone, like it had been shaved right down to the scalp, but unevenly, like it hadn't been done by clippers. His skin looked too pale, but not the usual "I'm cold" kind of pale. It was this almost gray color, stretched thin, and there were these faint red marks and scratches appearing on his arms as we stared, like someone invisible was dragging a pen along his skin. He had his hands pressed over his face, long, bony fingers, knuckles white. His shoulders shook. One of our friends took a step forward, whispering, "Echo?" He flinched. We all stopped. He spoke without taking his hands away, his voice rough and small. "Don't touch me." The way he said it, it wasn't fake. It wasn't a joke. There was this desperation in it, the kind that makes your stomach drop. "Echo, it's us," I said. "We came back for you. We're going to take you home, okay? Just look at us." "Don't follow me," he whispered. "Don't follow where I went." His words didn't make sense, but the fear behind them did. Someone tried to circle around to see his face. He turned with them, like he was protecting us from whatever expression he was hiding. And then we all heard it. The wind moving through the broken tombs, carrying these thin, almost voices. Just at the edge of hearing, little pieces of words that sounded like names, curses, or prayers. I couldn't tell. It felt like they were being said right behind my ear and far away at the same time. I remember thinking, this place doesn't want us here, and it doesn't want to let him go. One of the guys, tall, always the first to crack a joke in class, stepped up and said, gently, "Hey man, we're going to get you out of here, okay? You don't have to look at us, just come with us." He reached out very slowly and brushed Echo's sleeve. Just the fabric. Echo screamed. Not loud exactly, but deep, like something tearing inside him. We all stumbled backward. My heart was hammering so hard I felt dizzy. He dropped his hands just enough for me to see his eyes. You know how a person's eyes tell you everything about them? These didn't. They looked almost like they belonged to someone standing a few steps behind him, peering through. But they were still Echo's eyes too. That's what made it so awful. You could see the boy we knew in there, trapped behind something we couldn't touch. We'd only lost him for maybe 15 minutes, 20 max. But hearing him say that, in that place, in that cold, time suddenly felt stretchy, unreliable. Somebody started crying softly. Another person kept saying, "This isn't funny anymore," even though there hadn't been anything funny for a while. The thing is, we still loved him, still cared about him. Whatever had happened, that didn't disappear. So we did the only thing that made sense in that moment. We surrounded him. Not too close, but close enough to make a circle. We didn't touch him again, but we walked with him, step by slow step, back toward the gate. And as we walked, you could feel the cemetery adjusting, like it was letting something go that it wanted to keep. The fog thinned out. The strange snow rain slowed. The whispers faded into just wind again. By the time we reached the gate, the sky had cleared. The storm had just stopped. No sign it had ever been as bad as we'd felt it. The world outside the fence looked ordinary. Streetlights, quiet roads, the distant glow of the campus dorm windows. It was like we'd stepped from one reality back into another. When we counted ourselves at the gate, there were 11 again. No extra. No missing. Just different. We walked Echo back to the dorms in silence. No one joked. No one explained. No one could. Later, we tried to talk about it. The story kept shifting, depending on who told it. Some people insisted his hair hadn't really fallen out, that it just looked shorter in the light. Others swore they'd seen fresh wounds appear on his skin as we watched. A few claimed they'd heard their own names whispered in the wind, even though nobody else heard that. Echo stayed with us after that, but he was quieter. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at a wall like he was listening for something. Once, when I asked him what he remembered, He just said, "I stepped between two graves, and for a second I wasn't here. I was somewhere close, but wrong, and something there saw me first." He never went near the cemetery again. Neither did I. Here's what I know though, what I feel, even now, telling you this. Some places don't just sit there. They lean, they reach. They bend the rules around themselves like heat over a road. That cemetery behind our old library, it's one of those places. It stretches reality, tugs at time, and sometimes, if you're not careful, it takes a piece of you and sends back something altered. Not gone, not fully broken, just changed. We brought our friend back that night. But every now and then, when the wind hits just right and I hear a voice in the distance that sounds like it's saying my name, I wonder, did we really bring all of him back? Or did some part of him stay there, standing by that nameless stone, listening to the whispers, while something else slipped into his place and learned how to say, "Don't touch me, don't follow me, not where I went"? All right, come a little closer. I want to tell you a story, and I need you to really listen, not just with your ears, but with that quiet place behind your ribs where old memories tend to hide. There are forests in this world that breathe. I don't mean that in a poetic way, though it sounds like it. I mean there are places where the trees seem to inhale and exhale, where the branches trade secrets with the wind, and where the moonlight falls like it remembers everything it's ever seen. That's where I was. I remember walking through one of those forests late on a winter night. The sky above us was dark as ink, and the stars looked like someone had stitched them into the black with silver thread. The leaves were rimmed with frost, and a thin wind was slipping between the trunks, sighing its way down the hill. I say us because I wasn't alone. My two children walked just behind me, Noah and Elsie. At least, that's what I called them when they were mine. I wasn't shivering, even though it was cold enough for our breaths to fog, except they didn't. I wasn't tired, even though it felt like we'd been walking for hours upon hours. My legs moved, but there was no ache in them, no heaviness in my feet. If you've ever had a dream where you're moving, but it feels like you're gliding instead of walking, yes, it was that. I remember humming an old lullaby, something my grandmother used to hum by the fireplace when storms rattled the windows. I didn't even think about it. The tune just slipped out of me like it had been waiting. Behind me, the kids tried to laugh at something. Some smiles, some shared joke. But the sound came out thin, like the forest swallowed it before it had a chance to become real. And then Elsie, my little one, pointed at the ground. "Look," she said, and her voice was soft and cold at the same time, like snow landing on bare skin. "Mama, look at this." She bent down, pushed aside a few frozen leaves, and picked up a photograph. That part still makes my skin prickle, even now. Noah leaned over her shoulder. I stepped closer, and all three of us stared. It was us. Not the forest us, the alive us. We were standing in front of a small stone house with ivy climbing up the walls, the kind of place that always smelled like soup and laundry and something baking. In the picture, my cheeks were flushed, my hair a little messy from the wind. The kids were squinting into the sun, both mid-giggle. You could almost hear the laughter. We looked warm, solid, real, not like we did in that forest. In the forest, our faces just didn't change. Same unblinking eyes, same pale skin, no breath clouding the air, no tiredness, no hunger. You know when you see an old doll whose painted face never moves? It was a little like that, only somehow sadder. Elsie turned the photograph over. On the back, in my handwriting, was a date from several years before, and beneath the date, I had drawn a tiny feather and 3 little dots, like I always did when I wrote something meant only for us. My secret mark. The wind stopped. I know that sounds dramatic, but it did. The forest inhaled and then held it. Noah swallowed. "Mom," he whispered, "why do we still look like this? Why haven't we grown at all?" And something in me tightened, like a knot that had been ignored for too long. Before I could answer, we heard it. A distant sound drifting through the trees. Not a clock tower this time, though I've heard stories like that. No, for us, it was the bell from the church in the village below, rolling up the hill. Slow, heavy, counting the seconds toward midnight. I don't know how I knew, but I did. "We should follow it," I murmured. "I think it belongs to us somehow." So we walked. Eventually the trees thinned, and we came to the edge of the village. It looked almost exactly like it had in the photograph. Lanterns glowing behind curtains, smoke curling from chimneys, the cobblestones shining faintly with frost. Someone's dog barked once, then went quiet, ears pricked toward us without knowing why. In a window of the little church on the hill, we could see a clock, hands trembling their way toward 12. And when it struck, when that bell rang out and the 12th chime rolled over the roofs, everything in me snapped into place. Memories hit me like a wave, not gently either, not like a nostalgic montage. No, like ice water dumped over my shoulders. I remembered. A winter storm, the road slick with sleet, the car skidding, headlights coming toward us too fast, Noah screaming my name, the world flipping, the sound of metal twisting, glass exploding, and then the weightless, terrifying moment when there's no up, no down, just falling. And then the river, black and furious. I remembered the water forcing its way into my lungs, the desperate reach for my children's hands, the sound of my husband, Adrian, shouting their names, trying to yank open a door that wouldn't budge. And then, nothing. I gasped in the forest. So did the children. We clutched at each other like people do when the floor cracks under their feet. We remembered. We were dead. We weren't just lost or dreaming or caught in some strange winter spell. We were ghosts, echoes, the shadows of a melody that had once been warm. Noah's fingers tightened around my wrist. If we're spirits," he said, voice shaking, "why are we still here? Why didn't we go wherever you're supposed to go?" I wish I'd had a reassuring answer then. Something wise, something comforting. All I had was a heavy feeling in the place where my heart used to live. "There must be something unfinished," I said quietly. "We haven't let go of everything yet. I think we need to see your father." So guided more by instinct than by thought, we drifted through the silent village streets. We passed closed shutters, quiet kitchens, toys left askew in back gardens. No one saw us, of course. A cat arched its back and hissed at the empty air as we went by, that kind of almost seeing that animals sometimes do. We stopped outside a house I knew too well. Our house. The ivy still climbed the stone walls exactly like in the photograph. Same crooked front step, same cracked flower pot by the door. But everything felt colder now, like the warmth had been scraped off the surface of it. Through the window, we saw him. Adrian. His face, once the kind of face I leaned into without thinking, was hollowed out. Grief and years had carved shadows into his features. Guilt sat in his eyes like something that refused to move. But he wasn't alone. A woman sat beside him on the couch. She was younger than me, at least younger than I had been. She had that careful, gentle way of smiling at someone who's been hurt for a long time. She reached for his hand, and he let her. He looked at her like a man who'd been walking in the cold for years and had finally found a fire. Inside me, something dark and sharp twisted. He had moved on. He had found someone new. Our framed photos weren't on the mantle. The kids' drawings weren't on the fridge. To us, It felt like he'd replaced us and erased us in one life-size sweep. Beside me, Noah's jaw clenched. Elsie's small fingers turned to ice in my hand. "Did he just forget?" she whispered. "Did we matter so little?" I wish I could tell you I answered with maturity and grace, that I immediately saw the bigger picture, understood his pain, his right to continue his life. But the truth is, in that moment, all I felt was raw, aching betrayal. The lamp on the table flickered. The window glass trembled in its frame. Adrian looked up, startled, eyes scanning the room as if he sensed something he couldn't see, and our voices, mine and the children's, slid into the room like cold breath. "Why did you leave us?" The new woman's smile vanished. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. Adrian stood slowly, his face draining of color. "Who's there?" he whispered. "Who—" "We didn't leave you," Noah said, his voice echoing in a way that didn't belong to the living. "You left us. You let us go." Memories were flooding him too, I could see it. The accident, the river, his hands bloody from clawing at the doors, his screaming for help that arrived too late, the way they pulled him out instead of us, his empty bed that night, and every night after when he reached for people who were not there. He shook his head, tears filling his eyes. "I tried," he choked out. "I tried to get you out. I would have traded places with you. I would have—" I stepped through the wall then, into the room, into the warmth of the fire and the smell of tea. It didn't touch me. I felt nothing. "Not enough," I said. And that sentence, oh, that sentence. I regret the shape of it even now. The new woman, her name was Mara, I would learn later, pressed herself back against the chair, her hand over her mouth. She had never seen us in photographs. She had never heard our names. Adrian had buried us under silence because talking about us hurt too much. She was innocent. But in that moment, we didn't care about innocence. The room turned colder than the river had been. Picture frames rattled and fell, glass cracking on the floor. Candles blew out. The fire shuddered and dimmed. Shadows slid up the walls like smoke running backward. We didn't throw anything. We didn't scream. But our grief filled every inch of that house, and it was loud. Adrian dropped to his knees, one arm thrown in front of Mara like he could protect her from his past. "Stop," he begged. "Please, I'm so sorry. I wake up choking on your names. I talk to the empty rooms. I'd give everything to go back to that night. Please, please." It lasted seconds, maybe a little more. And then it was done. One last shock of cold, one last burst of force, and the house went dark. For us, at least. Like someone had snapped their fingers and switched scenes. Because suddenly we were no longer in the village. We were standing on the edge of a valley filled with mist. It wasn't heaven. It wasn't hell. It was a kind of in-between. It stretched farther than my eyes could see, lit by a light that wasn't really day or night. Just there. And then a presence appeared. I can't give you a neat label for it. Angel, guardian, judge. It was radiant, but not in a blinding way. Calm. Older than anything I'd ever felt. When it looked at us, I had the sense that it wasn't just seeing us as we were that moment, but as we had been, all the way back, and as we might have been if different choices had been made. "You're looking for justice," it said. The voice was gentle, but it held a weight you couldn't argue with. But what you chose was vengeance. My knees almost gave out. "He replaced us," I whispered. "He forgot. He gave our love away like it was something you could just hand off to someone new." "No," the presence said, and there was no anger in it, just steady truth. "He mourned. He shattered. He tried to save you and could not. His guilt has slept beside him every night since. He did not kill you. My hands, whatever I had instead of hands, rose to cover my face. And her? Noah asked, voice much smaller now. The woman on the couch, Mara, wasn't she part of it? The betrayal? She knew nothing, the presence said. He hid his pain, thinking it was kindness. She came to him with a whole heart, hoping to help him live again. She carries no guilt for your deaths, for your silence, or for his fear of grief. Her conscience is clear. Elsie stared down at her feet. We scared her, she whispered. We hurt her. Yes, the presence replied. You did. There was a pause, a long one, the kind that has enough space inside it to hold everything: regret, understanding, stubbornness, love. What happens to us now? I finally asked. The presence regarded us with something like sympathy. You acted in anger, it said. You chose to wound instead of to seek truth. You let bitterness speak louder than love, but you did not do so out of cruelty. You did so out of pain. It gestured toward the valley of mist before us. So you will walk the valley of sorrow, it said, not as punishment alone, but as a path of repentance. There you will learn to see clearly his grief, your own, in the way love can survive even when people break under it. Elsie clung to my side. Noah took my hand. And them? I asked. Adrian and Mara? Mara rises to peace, the voice said. Her fear of tonight will soften. She will come to understand that what brushed her world was not evil, but wounded. She will heal. She deserves dawn, not shadow. And Adrian? I asked, my voice cracking on his name. He will feel the weight of what happened, the presence said, of his choices, both the ones he made and the ones he was never given the chance to make. He is not condemned, but he is not untouched. Grief is not clean. Love is not simple. He, too, will walk a valley of his own until he can forgive himself. I let out a sound then, not rage, not anymore. It was something closer to release. We turned toward the mist. The valley ahead of us shimmered like water under starlight. Each step we took felt like walking through memories, good ones and bad ones both. I heard the kids' laughter in the old kitchen, the splash of them jumping in puddles, the snap of my temper on hard days, the apologies afterward, Adrian's arms around all three of us under 2 small blankets. As we walked, the presence called after us softly. Even lost souls may find sunrise, when bitterness yields to truth. That sentence has stayed with me. So we went on, not as angry spirits anymore, but as 3 tired hearts, learning to let go of a story we'd been telling ourselves, that we were thrown away, forgotten, replaced. We weren't. We were loved. We died too soon, yes. We were hurt, yes, but we were loved, and that mattered more than the shape of our ending. Back in the living world, the clocks kept chiming. Leaves kept falling. Families gathered at tables, argued about small things, made up, burned dinner, laughed. Our forest still whispered. The river kept moving. And if you ever find yourself on a chilly October night walking near an old hillside forest, and you hear a faint lullaby drifting through the trees, a tune that feels like home and goodbye at the same time, that might be me. Not haunting, just remembering. And if you take anything from our story, let it be this. Love really does reach beyond death. But peace? Peace doesn't live in vengeance. It lives in truth. Messy, complicated, painful truth. And in the courage to see it, even when it asks you to loosen your grip on your anger. That's all. Hey everyone, welcome to Paranormal M. Still having trouble falling asleep? Don't stress. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. I'm here to help you relax and drift off with paranormal stories from all around the world. And if you're cool with it, share your own paranormal experiences with me too. I absolutely love what I do. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into tonight's paranormal stories. Okay, so this happened a while ago, and even now, talking about it makes my chest feel tight. I'm not someone who jumps straight to ghosts or whatever, but this night, it changed something in me. It was late autumn, not summer, and the air had that cold, damp edge to it. I was over at my neighbor's place across the alley, Mirella, an older Romani woman everyone in our little block adored. You know the type, always slipping you food because you look too thin, always ready with a story or a joke. We were in her tiny kitchen, 4 of us crammed around this wobbly table, drinking strong coffee out of mismatched cups and sharing stupid stories from work. It was one of those slow, cozy nights where nothing is supposed to happen. You can almost feel how ordinary the evening is. And then we heard music. Not from a phone, not from a TV. This was live. You could hear individual things, a drum keeping time, a violin weaving around it, voices singing in a language I didn't recognize. It sounded far away and close at the same time, like it wasn't coming from any direction, just happening around us. The hairs on my arms stood up. Mirella went completely still. She set her cup down very gently, stared toward the back door, and said, in this low, careful voice, "Don't go outside." We kind of laughed at first. You know, nervous giggles. One of my friends, Danny, rolled his eyes like, "Okay, spooky grandma warning, sure." But her face, I'll never forget the way she looked. Not surprised, not confused, just afraid in a way that said, "I know what this is." The music grew clearer, like whoever was playing had moved just a little closer. I glanced through the window over the sink. Behind her house, there's this overgrown field that leads down toward the railway tracks. Usually it's just weeds, trash, nothing special. That night, though, the field looked wrong. There was this low, pale fog settled just above the ground, the way smoke hangs in a bar. And inside that fog, at first I thought my eyes were messing with me. There were shapes, people-shaped, moving slowly. I leaned closer, squinting. My brain tried to file it under kids messing around, but it wouldn't fit. These figures weren't solid. They looked like they were made of smoke, drifting and reshaping around invisible bones. Some of them were missing pieces, an arm fading into nothing, a leg that never touched the ground. One of them, I swear, had no head, but its body still swayed in time with the music, like it was listening anyway. And in the middle of all of them were 2 clearer silhouettes. A man in what looked like a dark suit, and a woman in a long, pale dress, almost glowing in the thin moonlight. They stood facing each other, like a couple at the center of a dance. The others moved around them in a circle, keeping time with the drums and the violin. They didn't look threatening. That's the worst part. They looked busy, focused, as if we didn't exist. Behind me, I heard Mirella whisper, almost to herself, "They're dancing the wedding again." I turned. "What do you mean, again?" She didn't answer that part. She just said louder, "Nobody goes out. Not while they're here. They don't cross a house with guests inside." She said it like it was a rule, like saying, "Don't touch the stove, it's hot." Something she'd grown up knowing. My other friend, Lena, shook her head, but you could see the curiosity in her face. "I want to see where it's coming from," she said. "It's just music." Mirella grabbed her wrist. I'd never seen that woman look small until then. "Please, she said, and her voice shook. "Stay inside. Let them finish." Danny gently pulled her hand away from Morella's. "We'll be right back," he joked. "If the ghosts want me, they can leave a voicemail." I remember wanting to stop them and not moving. I just stood there like an idiot, watching as they slid the bolt, opened the back door, and stepped into the night. We crowded at the window. They walked across the patchy grass toward the fog. The music changed as they moved, like someone had turned the volume down for a beat. The circle of fog people slowed. Then, almost in sync, all of them turned. Every face, if you can call them faces, shifted toward Danny and Lena. The fog thickened around their legs first, then their waists. From where we were standing, it looked like the whole group of figures inhaled at once, and the mist rushed in. I heard Lena say something like, "Do you feel that?" But her voice sounded muffled, like it was coming through water. Then the fog swallowed them completely, just for a second. The music hit one sharp, loud note, like a bow snapping across strings, and everything went silent. The haze loosened. The circle of figures drifted back into their slow dance, reforming around the couple in the middle. The drum picked up its beat again. Danny and Lena were gone. No scream, no running, no sound of footsteps. One heartbeat they were there, half lit by the porch light, and the next, the space they'd taken up was just empty night. I don't even remember deciding to move. Suddenly I was outside, breath burning in my throat, Morella behind me, shouting words in her language that I didn't understand. We ran to the spot where I'd last seen them. Nothing. No footprints in the wet grass, no dropped phone, no torn fabric. Just cold air and that fog, already starting to thin out. The music faded, drifting further away, like it was walking itself down the tracks. We called the police. Of course we did. There were statements, searches, flashlights sweeping through the field and along the tracks, dogs brought in, questions repeated over and over. What exactly did you see? Could they have decided to leave together? Are you sure they didn't say where they were going? Try telling people they got taken by music and smoke people at a ghost wedding. Watch how fast their faces shut down into polite disbelief. Days turned into weeks. No calls, no bodies, no cards from a new life somewhere. Just absence. Their social media accounts froze in time. Their rooms stayed half messy, half lived in. Their families kept hoping. I kept replaying that moment with the fog in my head like a loop I couldn't pause. Morella never moved away. She still lives in that house. Sometimes, when I pass by, she's sitting on her little front step with a blanket over her knees, staring toward the railway at the back. She told me, quietly, a couple of years after it happened, "It doesn't happen every year, only when the date lines up right." I didn't ask what that meant. I'm not sure I want to know how often right is. But she said this: "On some nights, when it's cold and the air is heavy, I hear the drum again. It starts soft, like someone practicing far away. If I look out too long..." She paused, and her eyes got shiny. I forced myself to ask, "Have you seen them? Danny and Lena?" She nodded once, very slowly. "Yes, they're holding hands. They look so young. They always look the same." I asked her why she stayed there if she knew all this. Why not move? She just shrugged and said, "Someone has to keep the door closed." I still don't know what happened that night. I've gone over it in my head 1,000 times. Maybe it was some kind of shared hallucination. Maybe there's an explanation that fits into science and physics and all the things that make the world feel safe and predictable. But here's what I do know. Before that night, I was the person who heard a ghost story and laughed it off. I'd say, "Yeah, spooky, sure," and then scroll on. Now, when I'm walking home late and the fog is sitting low over the ground, and I think I hear music that doesn't seem to come from anywhere, I go inside. I lock the door. And if you ever find yourself standing in the dark, with a strange melody drifting over the fields and a mist curling around your feet, please, don't be clever. Don't be brave. Just stay inside. You know, every now and then you come across a story that feels wrong. Not because it's gory or because it has some monster jumping out at you, but because even saying its name feels like you're poking at something that doesn't want to be touched. For me, that story is Ushi no Kubi, the cow's head. I stumbled on it when I was doing research for a video about Japanese ghost stories. At first, I thought it would be just another creepy folktale, like a yokai with a tragic backstory, or some vengeful spirit haunting a village. But this one was different, because with Ushi no Kubi, there is no story. No plot written down anywhere, no clear author, no beginning, no middle, no end you can point to. All anyone seems to agree on is this: it's supposed to be the most terrifying story ever told. And that's it. Just a name, the cow's head. Somehow, that alone is enough to scare people. So here's what we do know, if know is even the right word. The whispers about Ushi no Kubi go back to Japan's pre-modern times. In some rural areas, when the land was dry and people were desperate for rain, villagers would perform rituals involving cattle. Some stories say they would take the severed head of a cow, or sometimes just its blood, and cast it into a river or a well, praying for rain and survival. It was an offering, one life given in hopes of restoring balance. To them, it wasn't evil. It was sacred, a bargain with something bigger than themselves. But as times changed, those rituals started to look barbaric. People demonized them. The image of the cow's head slowly shifted from sacred offering to something you're not supposed to touch or talk about. A symbol of taboo, of sacrifice, of power that's better left alone. And that's when the rumors really started. Some say that in the late Meiji, or maybe early Showa era, the details always change, which is fitting, there was a thin little book called Ushi no Kubi. According to the old tales, anyone who read it either went insane or died soon after. Supposedly, the authorities got involved. They confiscated every copy, locked them away, maybe even burned them to calm people down. But here's the thing, there's no proof. No title listed in any old catalog, no author's name, no physical copy we can point to, nothing. Just stories about a story. And somehow, that lack of evidence makes it feel even more dangerous, doesn't it? The less people know, the more they fill in the blanks with their own fears. One version of the legend that really stuck with me is the bus story. You might have heard a variation of it before. They say there was once an elementary school teacher, I'll call him Mr. Hayashi, who took his students on a long bus trip for a school excursion. It was one of those slow, sleepy rides through the countryside. Kids chatting, some dozing off, fields rushing by outside the windows. To pass the time, Mr. Hayashi suggested they tell ghost stories. The students loved the idea. They took turns sharing the usual tales, bathroom ghosts, cursed tunnels, things like that. Everyone laughed and squealed, and it was all harmless fun. Then, when it was his turn, Mr. Hayashi smiled and said something like, "All right, I'll tell you a story that even adults are too afraid to say out loud. It's called Ushi no Kubi." The moment those words left his mouth, the mood shifted. But he brushed it off. Maybe he thought it would be fine. Maybe he didn't really believe the rumors. So he started telling the story. And that's where things get fuzzy. because no one remembers what he said next. The only thing people agree on is what happened to the bus. Partway through his telling, the bus suddenly lurched and screeched to a stop. The driver's hands were locked around the steering wheel, knuckles white. His face had gone completely pale. Sweat poured down his forehead like he'd just run a marathon. Some students fainted on the spot. Others screamed uncontrollably or burst into tears. A few curled up on the seats, shaking, as if they were trying to shut something out. When other teachers and staff later tried to ask the kids what they had heard, they just shivered or started crying again. Some said they remembered Mr. Hayashi opening his mouth, and then nothing. Just a blank. As for Mr. Hayashi, the man who told the story, they say he was never the same after that trip. He stopped joking with his students, stopped chatting in the teacher's room. He became distant, quiet, like a piece of him had been left on that bus. Some versions say he fell into a deep depression. In others, he simply left the school one day and never returned. But no matter which version you hear, one detail is always the same. Nobody remembers the content of the story he told. They only remember the name, Ushi no Kubi. That's the heart of this legend. It's not about what's inside the story. It's about the whole around it, about the terror that lives in what we don't know. And when you think about the symbol itself, the cow's head, it has layers. In Japanese culture, cows are complicated. They're symbols of strength, patience, and endurance, but they're also linked to sacrifice and death. Historically, when a cow's head was used in a ritual, it wasn't just an object. It was like a vessel, a bridge. People believed it could connect humans and the divine, that through it, they could negotiate with fate. In folklore, too, cows show up in strange places. There's Kudan, a half-human, half-cow creature that appears to warn people of impending disasters. There's Gozu Tenno, a deity associated with plagues and punishment. So when you hear the cow's head, it's not just some random creepy title. It carries echoes of offerings, curses, prophecies, and the price of trying to control forces you don't fully understand. It sounds like something that stands with one foot in the sacred and the other in the damned. Psychologically, that's what makes Ushi no Kubi so powerful. It belongs to this strange category of untellable stories, the kind you're allowed to mention, but not actually describe. You can say, I know a terrible story called The Cow's Head, but you mustn't tell what happens in it. People claim that if you hear the full story, you'll die within 3 days, or go mad, or be haunted, or whatever the version of the rumor happens to be. Yet, there are no official victims, no hospital records, no police reports, no written text. It's like a horror story that exists as a blank page. And our brains hate blank pages. We're wired to fill gaps. When we don't know the answer to something, we tend to imagine the worst possible scenario. So by giving us nothing but a name and a warning, the legend forces us to create our own version of the terror. In that sense, Ushi no Kubi is almost like a mirror. It doesn't reveal a fixed story. It reflects whatever scares you the most. Of course, myths don't stay buried for long, especially not in the internet age. In recent years, Ushi no Kubi has crept back into pop culture. Some modern horror writers have mentioned it in essays or woven it into short stories, teasing it as the story too horrible to print, but never actually sharing the contents. Publishers have put out horror collections titled things like The Cow's Head and Other Nightmares, using the name as this promise of ultimate fear, but without ever giving you the real Ushi no Kubi. There was even a film, The Cow's Head Hamlet in one version I heard, Cow's Head Village in another, that mixed the legend with rural superstitions and old curses. But again, even in the movie, they only circle around the true story. They never tell it outright. And online? Oh, it thrives there. If you search for Ushi no Kubi, you'll find endless threads, videos, theories, urban legend channels dissecting it from every angle. People share their own imagined versions, or talk about how they almost heard it, or claim they read a fragment somewhere. But no one can show you a definitive, original text. It's just fragments, reactions, fear. The myth spreads, even though there's still nothing at the center. In a way, Ushi no Kubi has become a digital ghost, a self-sustaining story that feeds on curiosity, on clicks, on late-night conversations between people like you and me. So what does all this really say about us? To me, Ushi no Kubi isn't just a Japanese ghost story. It's a quiet, unsettling reflection of how our minds work. We're afraid of the unknown, but we're also drawn to it. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't look this up, and then we type it into the search bar anyway. We say, I don't want to know, and then we lean in just a little closer. This legend doesn't need detailed monsters or vivid gore. It only needs a gap, a missing piece, and your imagination will do the rest. The horror doesn't start when someone finishes the story. It starts the moment you think, okay, but what is in it? So let me ask you something directly. If someone you trust sat in front of you right now, looked you in the eye and said, I know the complete version of Ushi no Kubi. I can tell it to you from beginning to end. Would you want to hear it? Would you really? Or would a small, quiet part of you hesitate? Maybe that's the real curse. Not a ghost, not a demon, not a cow-headed monster. Just that unbearable itch of curiosity, battling with the instinct to stay safe. Maybe the wisest choice is the one people have already made for generations. To keep the story untold. To live with the mystery. To let the fear exist, without ever giving it a shape. After all, Ushi no Kubi has survived this long as a story that doesn't technically exist. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how it's meant to stay. You know, when people talk about Scotland's Highlands, they usually go straight to the postcards in their mind. Those wild hills, the mist curled into the glens, the way the mountains look almost black against a silver sky. But if you sit still long enough up there, really listen, you start to notice something else. Not just the wind through the heather or the distant rush of water, but a kind of crying. Soft at first, almost like someone trying not to be heard. That's what I want to tell you about tonight, the weeping of the Highlands. Because for centuries, people have said that some of those cries don't belong to the living at all. They belong to three spirits. Alis, the mourner of the mounds, Mari Nanni, the washerwoman of fate, and Kianod, the weeper of the glens. Different names in different places, but the same thread runs through all of them. Their voices are said to follow death, disaster, and the sort of sorrow that settles into the land itself. Alis, the mourner of the mounds. So let me start with Alis. Her name, the old folks say, comes from the same roots as the old Ban Sith, the woman of the fairy hill. Long before people like you and me were wandering around taking photos of the scenery, the families out there believed Alis cried for them. Not for strangers, just for their own clan. You'd be in a stone cottage somewhere on a stormy night, the fire burning low, and someone would suddenly go quiet and tilt their head, then say, "Do you hear that?" Out beyond the walls, over the sound of the wind, there would be a thin, broken wail, like a woman grieving so hard her voice could barely hold itself together. That was Alis. Her cry didn't kill anyone. That's the part people sometimes get wrong. She wasn't a murderer. She was a messenger. Her voice meant that a thread in the family line was about to be cut, that someone's time had finally run out. As the old faiths faded and Christianity spread through those valleys, people started to talk about her a little differently. Some said she wasn't just crying for a person anymore, she was crying for the world itself. For children taken too early. For villages emptied by famine. For the way the land kept absorbing one grief after another and still had to bear it. Even now, there are Highlanders who will quietly tell you that if you go far enough into the hills, you might still hear Alis keening in the distance. They'll shrug and laugh it off in public, of course, but behind closed doors, they'll tell you that death never really goes silent. It just finds new ways to speak. Mari nan ni, the washerwoman of fate. Now Alis cries from far away, but Mari nan ni, Mari of the washing, comes much closer. Picture this, a foggy highland evening, the kind where the mist sits low and keeps close to the ground. You're walking along a burn, one of those narrow streams with stones that shine like bone under the water. Up ahead, you see a small woman kneeling by the bank. Her skirts are soaked. Her hair hangs in tangled ropes, dripping into the stream. She's scrubbing something in the water. You might think it's just laundry, until you notice the color. Not dirt, not mud, but a deep, dull red that refuses to wash away. Those are the clothes of the soon-to-be dead. Her looks change from story to story. Sometimes she's tiny and fragile, with skin like old parchment and eyes swollen from endless tears. Other times she's almost monstrous, her limbs too long, her feet webbed like a creature of the loch, or her breasts dragging in the water as she bends over the stones. But the rules around her stay mostly the same. If you stumble upon Mary and manage to approach her before she notices you, you have a chance. You can ask her whose clothes she's washing, and she'll tell you who stands on the edge of death. Some say if you gently take the cloth from her hands, you can even trade the fate she's working on for your own, though that's a dark bargain to make. If she sees you first, though, well, then it's your shirt she's wringing out, your blood she's rinsing from the sleeves. People in the Highlands used to whisper that this was why you should never walk alone by certain streams after dark. Not because something would attack you, but because you might learn more about the future than your heart could bear. Kionode, the weeper of the glens. Then there's Kionode, not seen, only heard. While Mary is all about the intimate, personal end of things, one life, one shirt, one final breath, Kionode belongs to the big disasters, the ones that leave whole families, even whole valleys, changed forever. Her name, in some stories, just means the keening one. She doesn't show herself. She doesn't wash clothes. She doesn't stand at anyone's door. Instead, she is the voice in the glen before the worst happens. People heard her long before famous events, they say. Low, heartbroken wails along the sides of the hills, sobbing that rose and fell with the wind near the lochs. Sometimes it sounded like one woman crying, sometimes like a chorus of them. One of the most repeated tales is tied to the massacre at Glencoe in the late 1600s. In the days before the soldiers began their work, there were reports of a woman's voice echoing through the valley at night, crying as if her heart had already seen what was coming. They say Kionode doesn't just mourn the dead. She mourns what people do to one another, the betrayals, the broken promises of hospitality, the way violence sinks into the soil and never truly leaves. In that way, she's not just a ghostly warning. She's the sound of the land itself grieving. The abbey that wouldn't be silent. You might be thinking, all right, but those are old stories, legends. That's different from real life, isn't it? Let me tell you about a Sunday morning that blurs that line a bit. In the middle of the 1700s, at a place called Fern Abbey up in Easter Ross, There was a collapse during a church service. The old roof finally gave way. Stone and timber crashed down onto the congregation. Dozens died. Some say 30, others say nearer to 40. For our purposes, let's just say it was far too many. In the week leading up to that service, there were reports from the area around Loch Slinn. People heard weeping. Just one woman's voice, they thought, on nights when the water lay flat as glass. No one could see her, but they could point to where the sound seemed to drift from, the far, shadowed shore. There was a young girl from a village a little way off, Cromarty. She swore that, one evening, she'd seen a tall, pale woman standing knee-deep in the loch, washing what looked like a stack of bloodied linen. The girl told her family. They scolded her for making things up. She told the neighbors. They laughed and told her she'd been out too late and frightened herself. Then the roof fell. I want you to picture this with me for a second. It's late evening in the Japanese countryside. The air's heavy and still, the kind of quiet where even the cicadas seem to be holding their breath. Out beyond the rice fields, the sky is fading from orange to deep blue, and the shadows are starting to stretch long and strange. That's where this legend lives. People out there talk about a woman they call Hachishaku-sama. Well, the older folks in my grandparents' village actually called her Hachishaku-sama, with this hushed, careful tone, like even saying the name too loud might draw her attention. They say she's 8 feet tall. Not, wow, that person is really tall, but wrong tall. Too tall to be human. She appears in a long white dress, something like a summer gown, and sometimes a pale coat over it, and she wears this wide-brimmed hat that hides most of her face. If you see her standing next to a stone wall or a fence, her head and shoulders rise high above it, like she doesn't quite fit inside our world. But it's not her height people are really afraid of. It's the sound she makes. They say you don't see her first, you hear her. A strange, hollow, almost playful sound, like someone trying to imitate the noise of an old train or a distant bell. Po, 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 po. Soft at first, like it's far away, then closer. And once you hear that sound, according to the legend, she's already chosen you. It doesn't matter who you are, kid, adult, grandparent. Once Hachishaku-sama sets her eyes on you, you're supposed to disappear within a few days. No explanation, no body, no trace. Just gone. People in the village say she isn't just a ghost or a demon. She's something older, something that was sealed away a long time ago with prayers and rituals. And as long as those seals hold, she can only drift along the borders of farmland and forest, watching. But seals break, statues crack, talismans rot. And that's where the story I heard really begins. It wasn't some ancient folktale at first. Back in the late 2000s, someone posted about her on an old Japanese bulletin board site, kind of like a huge anonymous message board. The post was just titled something simple, like, "About that tall woman from my grandparents' village." And at first, people thought it was just another scary story. In the post, the storyteller was a kid at the time. Let's call him Ren. Ren said he was staying at his grandparents' place in a quiet rural village one summer. You know the kind of place. Narrow roads, low stone walls, fields stretching out on all sides, and a house that smells like tatami mats and old wood. He'd spend his days catching beetles, playing with the neighbor's dog, just wandering around without a care in the world. One afternoon, he was sitting on the veranda, legs dangling, sipping barley tea and staring out at the fields. It was hot and still, and the air had that sleepy hum to it. That's when he heard it. Po, 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 po. At first, he thought it was just someone messing around, maybe kids playing with a toy or some strange bird call. It sounded dull and echoing, like it was bouncing off something far away. Curiosity got the better of him, so he leaned forward and peered over the low stone wall at the edge of the property. And there she was. So, let me just start from the beginning. After I put up the trail cams, the motion sensor lights, and a few other security things around the property, everything actually calmed down for a bit. For a couple of weeks, it felt like life was finally going back to normal. I could sit on the porch again without feeling like something was staring at me from the trees. But this last week has been an absolute nightmare. Saturday night, I was inside watching TV when I heard something slam onto the roof. Not a branch, not a squirrel. This was heavy. I've got a metal roof, so the sound just exploded through the whole house. My heart dropped into my stomach. I wasn't about to run outside in the dark after everything that's happened out here before, so I waited until morning. Next day, I go out there and I find the rock. This thing was big, about the size of a bowling ball, maybe a little smaller, and it looked like it had just been pulled out of a creek. Wet, moss on one side, bits of mud packed into the cracks. I just stood there staring at it, trying to wrap my head around it. Here's what messed me up the most. None of my sensor lights had gone off, not one. So whatever threw that rock had to be standing just far enough back in the tree line to stay out of the light, but close enough to hit the roof. That's not a kid messing around. That's someone, or something, who knows exactly where the edge of the light is. The following night, Sunday, was dead quiet. Almost too quiet. No rocks, no sounds, nothing. I tried to convince myself maybe it was just some punk teenagers passing through, a one-time thing. Then Monday happened. I decided to go back into the woods and have a look around. I wanted to see if I could find footprints, broken branches, anything that might explain who was throwing rocks at my house. I walked maybe 10, 15 minutes into the trees when I smelled it. That sickly, heavy, rotten smell. I knew it wasn't just an old log or something dead for months. That kind of smell is fresh. I followed it and found a carcass. This time it was a coyote, or at least, that's what it used to be. Its hind legs were snapped and bent underneath it at these horrible angles, like someone had twisted them around and just left them folded up. I could see blunt force injuries along its side, and the head. The head had been hit so hard the skull was cracked open. Not like something had eaten it, more like it had been smashed. I looked around for tracks. Nothing. No boot prints, no paw prints, no drag marks. The ground was disturbed, sure, but it was like whatever did it barely touched the ground at all. The longer I stood there, the worse I felt. My chest got tight, and I had that feeling like when you realize you're suddenly in the wrong place at the wrong time. I just thought, I shouldn't be here. So I turned around and got out of there. That night, I sat out on the porch for a good while with my firearm next to me. I didn't want to use it. I just felt better having it close. At one point, the sensor light down near the tree line flared on. I snapped my head up, grabbed my flashlight, and shined it toward the woods. Nothing. No movement, no rustling, no eye shine. Just that harsh white light pushing into the trees and stopping, like it hit a wall of darkness. The light went off. I stayed out there a bit longer, listening so hard my ears hurt. Nothing else happened that night. Tuesday came and went without anything strange. Most of Wednesday, too, was quiet. I actually started to relax a little. I remember thinking, maybe whatever it was moved on. Then Wednesday night happened. The hair on my arms stood up immediately. I got that feeling, like someone had just walked into the room and was standing behind me, staring, even though I was outside. I stood up, grabbed my gun in one hand, flashlight in the other, and slowly walked to the edge of the porch. I swept the light along the tree line. At first, I didn't see anything, just trunks and shadows. Then I moved the beam across the bushes directly opposite my driveway. And there they were, two huge glowing eyes staring right at me. They were higher off the ground than any person I've ever seen, maybe 7, 8 feet up, easy. They weren't reflecting like a deer's eyes normally do when you hit them with a light. These were a deep yellow, almost amber, and they didn't flicker or move. They just stared. My mouth went dry. I called out, "Hey, whoever's out there, come out where I can see you. I'm armed." What answered me wasn't a person. I heard this low, rumbling growl, like it was rising up out of the ground. It didn't sound like anything I've ever heard in the woods before. It sounded wrong. Almost like there was more than one voice layered in it, if that makes any sense. Like something out of a movie, but real. I thought about firing. I really did. But the way that sound hit me in the chest, the anger in it didn't feel scared of me at all. If anything, it sounded offended. Like I'd just challenged it and it was deciding what to do about it. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it turned. I watched those eyes glide sideways, then dip down as whatever it was moved back into the trees. It didn't crash through the brush like a bear or a person would. It was weirdly quiet, just a few soft rustles, and then nothing. I took one step off the porch to follow and instantly got this gut-deep warning, like my whole body just shouted, "Nope." So I listened. I backed up, went inside, and locked every door and window I have. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every time I started to nod off in the chair by the living room window, one of the sensor lights outside would flash on. Not just one either, different ones in different parts of the property. Front yard, side of the house, near the shed. I'd get up, look, shine my flashlight, and see absolutely nothing. This went on at least 3 times. By morning, I felt like I'd been awake for a week. Thursday and Friday were mostly quiet. I did hear one strange vocalization way off in the distance on Thursday evening, kind of like a scream mixed with a moan, but it was so far away I couldn't be sure what it was. Could have been an animal, could have been my nerves. At that point, I honestly didn't trust my own senses. Then came Saturday. Saturday around sundown, I decided I wasn't going to hide inside. I pulled a chair out to the usual spot on the porch, set my flashlight and firearm where I could grab them in an instant, and sat facing the tree line. I told myself I'd stay out there until I either saw something or got too tired to keep my eyes open. For hours, nothing. Crickets, occasional breeze, an owl somewhere back in the woods. It was almost peaceful. Close to midnight, I was just starting to think about going in when I heard movement directly in front of me. Not off to the side, not far away, straight ahead, in the same patch of woods where I'd seen those eyes before. Leaves crunching, something shifting its weight. Slow, deliberate steps. I stood up, grabbed my gun, and pointed it toward the sound, my flashlight ready but not on yet. I didn't want to blind myself in case it rushed me. I waited. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my neck. For a few seconds there was nothing. Just silence. Then all hell broke loose. It sounded exactly like a hailstorm, but the sky was clear. I stumbled, almost fell, and that's when I fired a warning shot up into the air. The second the shot rang out, the barrage stopped. For half a heartbeat, everything went quiet. Then I heard it. A scream tore out of the woods, high, long, and absolutely full of rage. I've never heard a human scream like that. I've never heard an animal scream like that either. It was I don't know how to describe it. It had this feeling in it, like I'd hurt its pride more than anything. Right after the scream, something huge took off deeper into the forest. I could hear branches snapping, bushes whipping, heavy footfalls pounding the ground. Whatever it was fast. Faster than anything that big has any right to be. And then, it was gone. I was shaking. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared out of my mind. But I still sat out there for another couple of hours, just in case it came back. I told myself that if it did, I wasn't firing into the air next time. Thankfully, nothing else happened that night. Now it's Monday. I've had maybe a few hours of broken sleep in the last few days. I'm exhausted, and yeah, I'm terrified. I can admit that. I know how this all sounds. If I was on the other side of this, just hearing the story, I might roll my eyes and think it's made up. But I swear to you, on my mother's grave, every word I'm telling you is true as I experienced it. The rock, the carcass, the eyes, the growl, the scream, the rocks hitting my house. My buddy Mark told me to come stay with him in town for a while, and honestly, I'm starting to think I should have taken him up on it. But this is my home. I've put everything I have into this place. I don't want to be chased out of it. I'm sharing this because I don't know what else to do. If you know anything about what this could be, or if you've experienced something similar, I'd really appreciate any advice, any tips, anything you've got. Because whatever is out there, it knows my property now. And it knows I know it's there. So, let me tell you what's been going on in my house, because at this point, I honestly don't know if I'm being paranoid, or if something really is going on. I moved into this remodeled triplex last June 2024. It looked super clean and fresh. New floors, new paint, the whole Pinterest thing. So I wasn't expecting anything weird. For the first couple of months, everything was totally normal. Then the noises started. It's always toward the back of the house, right by my room. At first, it was just these random banging and scratching sounds. My roommate Maya and I figured it was our neighbor or his big old dog bumping around next door. But then it kept happening when we knew they were out of town. No car in the driveway, lights off, total silence over there. And yet we'd still hear this knocking and scratching along the back wall. One night it got so loud that Maya literally sat up on the couch and said, "Is someone at the back door? That sounded like pounding." We checked. Nobody was there. Back gate was locked. Porch was empty. It wasn't every night, just often enough that we couldn't totally ignore it, but random enough that we'd laugh it off and blame the wind or the pipes. You know how you do that thing where you gaslight yourself so you can still sleep? Yeah, that. Then the other stuff started. So the bathroom closest to my room, same part of the house as the noises, has this little cabinet over the toilet. I kept finding the cabinet door open. At first, I thought it was a bad hinge or that one of my roommates was just forgetful. I tightened the screws, closed it firmly. Next day, open again. I finally asked, "Hey, is one of you leaving the cabinet door open all the time?" They both looked at me like I was accusing them of a crime. They were like, "No? We thought you were doing that. We've noticed it open too." Around the same time, my bedroom closet door started doing this thing. I'm super particular about that door because my cat, Nori, used to pee in closets when she was stressed in my old place. So I always make sure it's shut. It has one of those old knobs where you actually have to turn it all the way to get it open. It doesn't just drift or pop open on its own. But I'd come home from work or from hanging out with friends, walk into my room, and the closet door would be cracked open. Not wide, just open enough to notice. The first time I thought, Okay, I must have rushed out and forgotten. Then it happened again, and again. And after like the fourth time, I was like, no, I know I closed you. We kept telling ourselves, it's just an old house. Houses settle. Doors shift. You know, everything kind of escalated 2 weeks ago. We decided to have a small get-together. Nothing huge, just a handful of friends on the back patio. Music low, snacks, drinks, typical weekend stuff. My friend Lila brought her new boyfriend, Daniel. It was his very first time at our place. He had absolutely no idea about any of the weird stuff. No ghost stories, no hints, nothing. At one point, Daniel went inside to use the bathroom. Again, that same bathroom near my room with the weird cabinet. We were all still outside, talking and laughing. Later that night, after most people had left, Lila told me what Daniel had said on the drive home. Apparently, when he came out of the bathroom, he heard loud banging down the hallway, toward the back, right by my room. He thought we were playing a prank on him, like trying to spook the new guy. Then he told her something that honestly gave me full-body chills. Here's the thing. My bedroom door had been shut the entire time, and every single person was outside on the patio. No one was in the hallway. No one was in my room. Lila only told him later about the noises and the doors. He had no context when it happened. That's when it started feeling less like quirks of an old house, and more like something else. We found out from our landlord that my room used to be a kid's bedroom before the remodel. For some reason, that has just stuck in my head. A small figure, a child's room. Everything centered on that part of the house. And then there's Nori. Since we moved in, she has been peeing on my bed once or twice a week. She has never done this in all the years I've had her. I took her to the vet, full workup. No UTI, no kidney issues, blood work totally normal. The vet said it might be stress. When I thought about the timing, I realized it started around the same time as the banging and scratching. It wasn't immediate when we moved in, just once the weird stuff started, so did the bed peeing. Lately, she's been extra clingy at night. This cat has never been a cuddler. She's always been Miss Independent, foot of the bed, chair in the corner, anywhere but right next to me. But for the last month or so, she's been sleeping pressed against me, right up against my side or my chest, every single night. If I roll over, she scoots closer. All of that together, the sounds, the doors, the guest who saw something, my cat acting totally out of character. It just feels like more than old house noises. It really does feel like something is attached to that end of the house, to my room. We jokingly said we'd sage the place, but recently that's felt less like a joke and more like maybe something we should actually do. For the longest time, I kept asking myself, okay, if this is something, is it benevolent? Is it just there? Or is it malicious? I mean, I don't feel like I'm being attacked, but I also don't feel totally at ease. It's like living with a roommate who never pays rent and occasionally freaks you out. And then the scream happened. This was just the other night. I should have updated sooner, but life got busy, and also I think part of me was just trying to pretend it didn't happen. So, 2 nights ago, my friend Evan was over. We were in my room, just hanging out, talking, getting a little snuggly. You know, nothing wild, but definitely in our own little bubble. My roommate Maya was in the living room, watching TV by herself. Doors open, normal evening. We're mid-conversation, relaxed, everything totally fine. And then out of nowhere, we both hear this loud female voice scream, "No!" It was sharp, clear, and it sounded like it came from the foot of my bed. Not the hallway, not the TV. Right there, in the room with us. We both froze instantly. I remember we just stared at each other, eyes huge, not even breathing. It felt like all the air got sucked out of the room. After a second, Evan was like, "Stay here. I'm gonna check." I did not want him to leave, but I also didn't want to walk out there myself, so I just sat totally rigid on the bed while he did a full sweep of the house. He checked the hallway, the kitchen, the bathroom, the back door, everything. Then he went to the living room and asked Maya, "Hey, did you just yell, or was that from your show?" She looked at him completely confused and said, "No? What are you talking about?" He asked, "You didn't hear someone scream no?" And she was like, "No, I didn't hear anything." Here's the important part. The walls in this place are thin. Like, if someone drops a fork in the kitchen, I hear it in my room, muffled, but there. I can usually catch most conversations as this kind of hum through the wall. When Evan came back to my room, he just looked at me and said, "Okay, I definitely heard it. That wasn't just you." We both agreed it was a female voice. We both heard the word no super distinctly. And yeah, that kind of killed the vibe for the night. Afterward, I called another friend of mine, Jess, who's also a vet and pretty open to spiritual stuff. I told her everything, especially about Nori's behavior. She said it's possible my cat is trying to mark the bed as her territory and, in a way, trying to protect me, like she's claiming the space around me as hers. So now I'm lying in this weird in-between space. Part of me is skeptical and trying to keep everything logical. And another part of me is like, something is going on here. The noises, the cabinet and closet doors, the shadow Daniel saw, the way it all revolves around my room, Nori peeing and then suddenly turning into my tiny bodyguard, and now this loud, disembodied scream telling us no, right when things were getting intimate. I don't know if whatever's here is trying to protect me, warn me, or just freak me out for fun, but it definitely feels like things have escalated. We're still talking about cleansing the place, maybe saging, maybe getting someone who actually knows what they're doing to come by. I'm trying to stay respectful of whatever it is, while also reclaiming my space, because it's my home too. So that's where I'm at, sleeping with a clingy cat, listening for bangs in the night, and trying to figure out if the roommate I never invited is actually on my side or not.